Monday morning hit me like it always did, coffee first, email second, and the usual pile of work waiting on my desk. I'm Erica, by the way, 34 years old, divorced, and pretty much married to my job at this point. I was scrolling through my inbox, deleting spam and sorting through the important stuff, when I saw it. An email from Sheila. My sister, haven't heard from her in 12 years. My heart did this weird little skip thing. I stared at the sender's name for a solid minute before I had the guts to open it. Hey Erica, it started, real casual, like we'd just talked yesterday instead of over a decade ago. I'm getting married in 2 months. I know it's been a while, but I'd really like you to be there. The wedding's on Saturday, June 15th, at the Grand Hotel downtown. Please let me know if you can make it, Sheila. I read it 3 times. Then I leaned back in my chair and just stared at the ceiling for a while. 12 years since I walked out of Dad's construction company and basically told my whole family to go screw themselves. Well, not in those exact words, but close enough. See, here's the thing about my family. My parents, Robert and Linda, they had me first, then Sheila came along a year later. We were close growing up, or at least I thought we were. Same schools, same friends sometimes, typical sister stuff. Dad always talked about how his construction business would be something for both of us someday, how we'd work together and make it bigger and better. When I graduated college with my business degree, Dad was so proud. You're gonna start at the bottom, he told me. Learn every part of this business. Get your hands dirty. That's how you really understand what we do here. Made sense to me. I was eager to prove myself. So I started as a project coordinator. Basically the person who makes sure everyone shows up on time and has the right tools. Not glamorous, but I figured it was part of the process. I worked my ass off for a year. Stayed late, came in early, learned everything I could about permits and schedules and dealing with contractors who showed up drunk or didn't show up at all. Then Sheila graduated. Business degree too, just like mine. And you know what Dad did? Made her deputy CEO. Just like that. No starting at the bottom, no learning the ropes, no proving herself. One day she was a college student, the next day she was basically running half the company. I found out from Jennifer in accounting. She pulled me aside after lunch and said, "Did you hear about your sister?" with this look on her face like someone had died. I marched straight to Dad's office, didn't even knock. Sheila was already there, sitting in the chair across from his desk like she owned the place, going over some budget reports. What the hell, Dad? I said. Yeah, not my most professional moment, but I was pissed. Dad looked up from his papers. Watch your language, Erica. We're discussing business here. Business? You mean the business where I'd been working my butt off for a year while you hand my little sister a management position she never earned? Sheila turned around in her chair. Erica, don't be dramatic. Dad knows what he's doing. Dramatic? I've been here every day for 12 months, learning this company inside and out, and you waltz in here with 0 experience and get handed everything on a silver platter. How is that not worth being dramatic about? I've been preparing for this my whole life, Sheila said. Dad and I have been talking about my role here since I was in high school. Just because you weren't part of those conversations doesn't mean they didn't happen. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. All those years of Dad talking about our business, about how we'd work together, and apparently he'd been planning to sideline me the whole time. This is insane, I said. You can't just hand someone a management position without any experience. The other employees are going to see right through this. They'll know it's just nepotism. Dad's face went red. Don't lecture me about how to run my business. But that's exactly what this is. You're not promoting based on merit or experience or anything that makes sense. You're playing favorites with your daughters, and everyone's going to know it. How do you think that looks to our clients? To our contractors? They're going to think this whole company is just some family game where competence doesn't matter. If you don't like it, Dad said, standing up, there's the door. Sheila turned to face me fully. Honestly, Erica, you've always been like this. Always complaining, always making problems where there don't need to be any. Maybe Dad's right. Maybe this company doesn't need someone who's going to cause conflict every time a decision gets made. I looked at both of them. My father, who'd been filling my head with dreams about working together since I was a kid. My sister, who apparently saw me as nothing more than a troublemaker standing in her way. Fine, I said, you want me gone? I'm gone. And I walked out, didn't clean out my desk, didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't even turn around, I just left. So there I was, 23 years old with a business degree and exactly zero family left to talk to. Mom called me that night, crying about how I was tearing the family apart, but I hung up on her. What was best for everyone apparently didn't include what was best for me. I spent about 2 weeks feeling sorry for myself, eating too much takeout and watching Netflix in my crappy studio apartment. But then I figured out that wallowing wasn't going to pay my rent, so I started job hunting. Finding work wasn't easy. Every interview seemed to go the same way, trying to explain why I left my father's company without sounding like a spoiled brat. But eventually I landed a job at Meridian Development, a real estate development company that handled big projects. They designed developments, secured financing, managed construction from start to finish. Way bigger scope than Dad's little construction outfit. I started as a junior project assistant, basically the same level I'd been at Dad's company, but I didn't care. At least here, I knew I'd have a real shot at moving up based on what I actually did, not who I was related to. And man, did I work. I was the first one in the office every morning and the last one to leave. I learned everything I could about zoning laws, environmental impact studies, financing structures, contractor management. Tom Richardson, the owner, noticed. He started giving me more responsibility, letting me sit in on client meetings, even letting me handle some of the smaller projects on my own. After 2 years, Tom promoted me to project manager. After 4 years, senior project manager. By year 5, he made me deputy director. I was 28 years old and running major development projects worth millions of dollars. I loved it. Every day was different. One day I'd be reviewing architectural plans, the next I'd be negotiating with city officials about permits, the next I'd be on a construction site making sure everything was going according to schedule. It was exactly what I'd hoped for when I first imagined working in the family business, except better because I'd actually earned my position. Tom was like the father I'd wished I had in business. He pushed me but also supported me. When I screwed up, he'd explain what went wrong and how to fix it next time. He never made me feel stupid or incompetent. I worked as deputy director for 3 years. Tom and I made a great team. He handled the big picture strategy and client relationships. I made sure everything actually happened the way it was supposed to. The company grew. We took on bigger projects, hired more people, expanded into new markets. Then one day, Tom called me into his office. He looked more serious than usual. "Erica, I'm thinking about retiring," he said. "I want you to take over as CEO." I almost choked on my coffee. He explained that I was already running most of the day-to-day operations, that I knew the clients and processes better than anyone. He'd originally thought he'd hand the company over to one of his daughters, but Sarah was a writer now and Lisa was getting her MFA in fine arts. Neither had any interest in the business world. "We're about to get into some really big projects," he said. "Whole neighborhood developments, mixed-use communities. I'm also prepared to transfer 10% of the company shares to you as part of the transition." 10% of a company worth several $1,000,000, I said yes immediately. That was 3 years ago. Now I'm 34, CEO of a successful development company, and doing exactly what I'd always dreamed of doing. But sitting there in my office, staring at Sheila's wedding invitation, all those memories came flooding back. I stopped remembering the past and returned to the present moment. I had a decision to make about this wedding. I typed a quick reply, "I'll be there, congratulations." Short and simple. A few days later, I decided to take a 2-week vacation. I needed to clear my head, so I went on a road trip around the country. Just me, my car, and a bunch of national parks I'd never had time to visit. When I got back to work, I was feeling refreshed and ready to tackle some new projects. My deputy, Marcus, had left a stack of potential cooperation agreements on my desk. I started going through them, and literally on the very first page, I saw it. Richardson Construction Company. My father's business. I stared at the name for a solid minute. Then I called Marcus into my office. "Tell me about this Richardson construction proposal," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, that one looks really promising," Marcus said. "I already had preliminary talks with the owner. He's really eager to work with us, offering great rates and flexible terms. Seems like his company could use the work. I'll handle the negotiations with this company myself," I told him. "Just forward me all their contact information." After Marcus left, I did some research on Dad's company. What I found was interesting. Over the past 2 years, they'd had serious financial problems. Cash flow issues, several experienced employees had quit, and they were struggling to land new contracts. I also found out who was working there now. Dad, obviously. Sheila, who was apparently still deputy CEO. Her fiancé had joined the company too. A couple of his friends worked there now, and even one of Mom's friends had somehow gotten a job in their office. So the personnel policy hadn't changed at all. If anything, it had gotten worse. Now it was just a bunch of family and friends with no real qualifications running the place into the ground. I smiled. This was perfect. See, here's the thing that made this even better. When I got married 7 years ago, I took my husband's last name. Even after we divorced 2 years later, I kept it. So my last name now is Miller, not Richardson. Dad and Sheila would have no idea they were dealing with me. I started drafting emails to them about potential cooperation. Professional, businesslike, discussing project timelines and cost estimates. Neither of them had any clue they were negotiating with their own daughter and sister. And as I typed those emails, a plan started forming in my mind, a really good plan. The negotiations with Dad's company went on for about 6 weeks. I exchanged probably 20 emails with them, sometimes with Dad directly, sometimes with Sheila. They had no clue who they were dealing with. To them, I was just Erica Miller, CEO of Meridian Development, a potential client who could save their struggling business. And man, were they desperate. Dad's first email was all professional and confident, talking about their decades of experience and commitment to quality. But as the weeks went on, I could see the desperation creeping in. The discounts got bigger, the timelines got more flexible, the promises got more extravagant. Sheila's emails were even more revealing. She kept emphasizing how family-oriented their company was, how they took care of their people. Real rich, coming from someone who'd thrown her own sister under the bus 12 years ago. My plan was simple but perfect. I'd show up to the wedding, let them treat me like garbage one more time, and then reveal who I really was at the perfect moment. I coordinated with Marcus that he'd call Dad during the reception with a message I'd pre-written. The timing had to be just right. The day of the wedding finally arrived. I spent way too long picking out what to wear. I wanted to look successful but not flashy. Professional but not threatening. I settled on a simple black dress and modest jewelry. Nothing that would make me stand out too much. The Grand Hotel downtown was exactly the kind of place Sheila would pick. Fancy lobby, crystal chandeliers, probably cost a fortune. I walked into the reception area and immediately looked for the seating chart. There it was, table assignments listed alphabetically. I found my name at the very bottom of the list. Table 12, I walked over to check out where table 12 was located. Of course, the absolute farthest corner of the room, practically behind a pillar. While the main wedding party table was right up front with the best view of everything. Real classy, Sheila. I was standing there looking at my crappy table assignment when I heard Mom's voice behind me. "Erica, oh my God, I can't believe you actually came." I turned around, there were my parents, both looking older than I remembered. Dad had more gray hair, Mom had more wrinkles around her eyes. But they were smiling these big fake smiles like we were long-lost friends instead of family members who hadn't spoken in over a decade. "Hello, Mom, Dad," I kept my voice neutral. "We're so happy you're here," Mom gushed. "We really didn't expect you to come. It's been so long." "Yeah, well, Sheila invited me, I figured I should make an effort." Dad stepped forward and actually tried to hug me. I let him, but I didn't hug back. "You look good, kiddo, real professional." "Thanks." Mom looked around the room, then back at me. "Well, tonight is all about the important guests, you know. The main table is reserved for the wedding party and our closest family friends, the people who really matter to Sheila." She gestured toward my corner table. "But we made sure you had a nice spot over there. You'll be comfortable." I almost laughed. Even now, even after 12 years, they couldn't help themselves. They had to make sure I knew exactly where I stood in the family hierarchy. "Thanks for thinking of me," I said. "I'm sure it'll be perfect." I walked over to table 12 and sat down. The other people at the table were clearly other family outcasts or random acquaintances. Nobody I recognized, nobody who seemed particularly excited to be there. As the evening went on, I watched my family work the room. Dad was schmoozing with what looked like potential business contacts. Mom was playing the proud mother of the bride. And Sheila, in her big white dress, was soaking up all the attention like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. I could hear people whispering about me. "That's the older daughter," someone said. "The one who couldn't make it in the family business." Another voice, "I heard she just gave up and walked away, couldn't handle the pressure." "Such a shame," said an older woman at the next table. "Some people just don't have what it takes to succeed." I sipped my wine and tried not to roll my eyes, if only they knew. The dinner was actually pretty good, I had to admit. Expensive catering, multiple courses, the works. Sheila had definitely gone all out. I ate quietly and watched the show, waiting for my moment. Finally, it was time for the toasts. The maid of honor went first, talking about how wonderful Sheila was and how perfect her new husband was for her. Then some guy from the groom's side made a speech about love and commitment. The usual wedding stuff. I pulled out my phone and sent Marcus a text, "Call." Within a minute, I saw Dad pull his phone out of his jacket pocket. He looked at it, frowned, then stepped away from the main table to take the call. I watched him from across the room. Even from that distance, I could see his body language change as Marcus delivered the message I'd written. "Mr. Richardson, this is Marcus Stevens from Meridian Development. I wanted to let you know that our CEO is actually here at your event tonight. This person will be approaching you shortly to discuss our final decision about the construction contract." Dad started looking around the room frantically. He was clearly trying to figure out which of the guests was the CEO of a major development company. I could see him scanning faces, probably looking for some middle-aged guy in an expensive suit. Meanwhile, I stood up from my table and started walking toward the front of the room. Dad was still on the phone when I tapped him on the shoulder. "Excuse me," I said, "I think you're looking for me." He turned around, still holding the phone to his ear. "I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of an important call, can this wait?" I smiled and pulled out one of my business cards. "I don't think it can wait, actually." I handed him the card. He looked down at it, and I watched his face go through about 5 different expressions in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion, recognition, shock, and then something that looked like he might throw up. "Erica Miller, CEO, Meridian Development," he read out loud. The phone slipped out of his hand and clattered to the floor. His face went from normal color to pale white to bright red in about 10 seconds. For a moment, I thought he might actually pass out. Mom appeared next to us, probably wondering why Dad was just standing there looking like he'd seen a ghost. "What's wrong? Who is this person?" "It's Erica," Dad said, his voice barely audible. She runs the development company." Mom looked at the business card, then at me, then back at the card. "What development company?" "The one that's been negotiating with our construction business for the past 2 months," I explained helpfully. The one that could save Dad's company from bankruptcy. Sheila suddenly appeared, still in her wedding dress, looking annoyed. What's going on over here? People are trying to enjoy the reception. Dad handed her my business card without saying anything. I watched her read it, watched the same expression of shock cross her face. This is impossible, she said, you're nobody. You walked away from everything 12 years ago. Actually, I walked away from you guys 12 years ago. Turns out there was a whole world out there where people get promoted based on merit instead of family connections. By now, several other guests had noticed something was happening. The conversations around us were getting quieter as people started paying attention to our little family drama. Dad finally found his voice again. Erica, we need to talk about this privately. Oh, I think we're past private conversations, don't you? Besides, I'm enjoying the wedding so much. Especially my seat assignment. I gestured toward table 12 in the corner, really makes a person feel welcomed. We didn't know you were, Mom started. Successful, important, worth treating with basic respect, I finished. See, Mom, that's exactly the problem. You think people only deserve decent treatment if they can do something for you. I walked over to the microphone that had been set up for the toasts. The DJ looked confused but didn't try to stop me. Excuse me, everyone, I said into the mic, sorry to interrupt the celebration, but I wanted to thank my family for such a warm welcome tonight. The room went quiet, all eyes were on me now. I'm Erica, the bride's older sister. We haven't seen each other in 12 years, not since I left the family construction business. And tonight, my parents made sure to give me a seat that really reflects how they feel about me. I pointed to table 12, way back there in the corner, so I wouldn't bother the important people. I could see people pulling out their phones, starting to record. This was about to go viral, and honestly, I didn't care. But here's the funny thing, I continued. It turns out I'm actually the CEO of Meridian Development, the company that's been negotiating to save my father's failing business. Small world, right? Gasps from the audience. Dad was frantically trying to get to the microphone, but I kept talking. So I want to raise a toast, I said, picking up a glass of champagne from a nearby table. To family loyalty, to treating people with respect regardless of their status. And to my sister's wedding, which will definitely be memorable. I took a sip of champagne, then looked directly at Dad. Oh, and about that construction contract we've been discussing? After tonight's warm family welcome, I've decided to pass. My company doesn't do business with organizations that prioritize personal relationships over professional competence. The room erupted, people were talking, shouting, filming everything on their phones. Sheila was crying and screaming something about me ruining her special day. Dad was trying to push through the crowd to get to me. I finished my champagne, set down the glass, and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted like I was Moses crossing the Red Sea. Just as I reached the door, Dad caught up with me. Erica, wait. Please, we can fix this, the company needs this contract, we're desperate. Now you're desperate, I said. 12 years ago, you told me I could leave if I didn't like your decisions. Well, I left, and I built something amazing without you. Tonight you proved you haven't changed at all. But the company your grandfather founded will go bankrupt. Mom had caught up too, tears streaming down her face. That's not my problem anymore, I said. You made your choice 12 years ago, I made mine tonight. My phone started buzzing before I even got to my car. Text after text from Dad, from Mom, even from Sheila. All begging me to reconsider, to give them another chance, to save the family business. I deleted them all without reading past the first few words. Over the next few weeks, the calls and texts kept coming. Dad offered to give me a smaller contract, then an even smaller one. He admitted the company was on the verge of bankruptcy, that they desperately needed the work. Mom sent long emotional messages about family forgiveness and second chances. I ignored all of it. Sheila called me about a month later. You have to fix this, Erica. If Dad's company goes under, I'll lose my job. We can't afford that right now. Then maybe you should start looking for a new job, I told her. Preferably somewhere that hires based on qualifications instead of family connections. I hung up on her. 6 months later, I heard through the grapevine that Richardson Construction had filed for bankruptcy. Dad and Mom still had their savings, so they weren't going to starve or anything. They'd just have to live more modestly. Just last week, Sheila called me again. Erica, I know things have been difficult, but I was wondering if maybe your company has any openings. I have experience in construction management now. I laughed so hard I almost fell out of my chair. Oh, Sheila, my employees actually work for their paychecks. They don't spend all day drinking coffee and gossiping about family drama. I'm not going to lie and say I don't think about them sometimes. But I also don't regret any of it. This wasn't revenge. This was just natural consequences. They made their choices, and I made mine. Now I'm 34, running a successful company, working on projects that actually matter. I've got great employees who respect each other and work hard. And I sleep just fine at night, knowing that everything I have, I earned myself.